Hey, boys and girls, it's Mrs. Ovenrader again. I just want to remind you that we've been looking at two-dimensional and three-dimensional shapes for our past two lessons, and today we're going to continue with that, and we're going to do a little fun activity with that. What I want to do is review our two-dimensional shapes that we talked about, and remember we said two-dimensional shapes are flat, and we talked about the circle, square, rectangle, and triangle. And then we were introduced to the other day our three-dimensional shapes, and we talked about how they are fat, not flat. And we looked at the cone, we looked at the cube, the rectangular prism, our sphere, our pyramid, and our cylinder. And those are the three-dimensional shapes that we talked about. What we are going to do now is I'm going to read you a story, The Three Little Pigs, and then we're going to talk about how we can use three-dimensional shapes to retell our story. The Three Little Pigs, retold by John Duncan, illustrated by Wes Ware. Once there were three little pigs. They set out into the great big forest to look for a nice spot to build homes. The first little pig gathered up straw to build his house. Swish, swash, swish. The second little pig gathered up sticks to build his house. Plickety, plackety, plick. The third little pig gathered up bricks to build his house. Ploppity, cloppity, clop. The first two pigs finished their houses in no time. They said to the third pig, "You're working too hard. Why don't you come play?" But he kept right on building. Click, clonk, plop, swack. Finally, he was all finished. He relaxed by a warm fire in his safe and strong house. One day, a big bad wolf came to the straw house of the first little pig. He could smell a kettle of soup, and it made him very hungry. He said, little pig, let me come in." But the first little pig replied, "Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin." So the wolf said, "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." With a swish and a whoosh, the straw house blew away. The first little pig jumped up and ran all the way to the second pig's house. The next day, the big bad wolf came to the house of the second little pig. He could smell a fresh loaf of bread baking in the oven. He said, little pig, let me in." "Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin," cried the second little pig. So the wolf said, "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." With a gust of air and a crack and a crash, the stick house fell to the ground. Both pigs jumped up and ran all the way to the third little pig's house. So the wolf now has blown over two houses. He blew over the house made of straw, and he blew over the house made of sticks. Who remembers what did the third pig build his house out of? When the third little pig heard about the wolf, he was glad his brothers were safe. He said, "You must be hungry and tired. Sit down and have some pie." The big bad wolf came to the third pig's house and smelled the pie. He said, little pig, let me come in." "Not by the hair on my chinny chin chin," cried the third little pig. So the wolf said, "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." He puffed and blew with all his might, but the brick house wouldn't fall down, so he gruffed and snuffed and blew again, but the brick house just wouldn't fall. The wolf had never had this happen before. He sat down on an old log and began to cry. The third little pig said, there, Mr. Wolf, you don't have to be so sad. You have a remarkable talent. You can use your talent for better things than blowing down houses." "I have an idea," said the third little pig. "Listen." Outside the woods, they heard the sounds of children laughing and playing. It was the local fair and everyone was going. The three little pigs and the big sad wolf all went down to the fair. Here's a wonderful way to use your talent, said the third little pig. With a huff and a puff, the wolf started blowing up colorful balloons. All the children came to see the fun sizes and shapes. The wolf was happy and amazed to have so many new friends. He wasn't bad or sad anymore. He was the big, glad wolf. The first little pig sold straw baskets. The second little pig played the fiddle. And the third little pig sat peacefully under the shade of an oak tree, smiling. The end. So boys and girls, I read that story today because we were talking about two-dimensional and three-dimensional shapes. And what I want to show you are some ideas on how you can use two-dimensional and three-dimensional shapes just to be able to do this project. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and I also send these out as well. Little ideas on what you can do for house ideas. You can use a milk, yogurt, or juice carton, and you could create the three little pigs' house. This example, they did, each side was a different thing. They made one side of straw, one side of sticks, and one side of bricks. Here is another example where they made three different houses. Also an idea, if you do not have one of those, is you could print off a template to make a cube, and you could make that into your house as well. And then there's also the STEM challenge where you could build your house using maybe toothpicks and gumdrops, toothpicks and marshmallows. First you start off and you can make a cube, and then you could put a pyramid for your roof. And then last, to make your characters, to retell the story, you could use toilet paper rolls or paper towel tubes you could make into your characters. You could use a rectangular prism, which would be maybe a shoebox, and you could make that into the wolf head. You could use cylinders and make the pig's snouts and the wolf's long nose. You could use a cone to make your cute little pig. And then here is another example that you could use to also make your characters. So those are just little ideas on how you can use 2D and 3D objects to create something to tell a story. And I have some examples here. Here's the toilet paper roll you could use, or again, a paper towel roll. Here was my little mini part that I kind of copied, and you could make your little mini cube. And then you could always take a piece of paper and add the roof on top. So it would be kind of like your triangular prism. I did make my cube and my pyramid out of marshmallows and toothpicks. And then I have here, if you get the school lunches or if you have them around, I also have milk container and a juice container that you could make into your houses by tearing up yellow paper, or if you happen to have some hay at home, you could put that on there. You could tear up some red paper to make your bricks on your house, or you could paint it or use something different. And then you could go out and gather some sticks to make your house made of sticks, or you could just use some brown paper to make it look like sticks. So boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed our lessons on two-dimensional and three-dimensional shapes, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.